Um, hey folks, how's everybody doing? Thanks so much for joining us this evening. We have an incredible program tonight. My name is Ruth Breech, and I am a senior campaigner with Rainforest Action Network on our climate and energy team, and I use she, her pronouns. Please feel free to put your name, pronoun, what land you're calling in from, and why you joined the webinar. So join us in the chat there. We were just enjoying the music of Zydeco, some of the Zydeco music from Southwest Louisiana. To get us going, I also wanted to introduce my co-host, Jackie Fielder. Jackie is the co-director of Stop the Money Pipeline, and I'm overjoyed to be here with her. And we have a really incredible group of leaders that we'll be having conversations with this evening. But to get us started, I wanted to just take an important moment to acknowledge the land and labor of Indigenous peoples and Black communities. So I'm going to be reading this off, so just please be patient. We live, work, play, and pray in the ancestral lands of the Indigenous nations that have existed since time immemorial, long before the creation of the United States. I live in the ancestral territories of the Arapaho, Apache, Comanche, Cheyenne, Kiowa, and Ute nations. These lands were the home of these Indigenous peoples prior to their forced removal, relocation, trail of broken treaties, and attempted genocide by the United States government. These lands continue to be embedded with rich histories and modern struggles for the survival of each community and their sovereign nation. We want to acknowledge that we are on occupied land that was forcibly taken from its original owners. We also want to recognize that the United States as we know it was built on the backs of forcefully enslaved Black people. We must acknowledge that much of what we know of the country today, including our culture, economic growth, and development that has been made possible by the labor of enslaved Africans and their descendants, who suffered the horror of the transatlantic trafficking, chattel slavery, and later on dehumanization through segregation and Jim Crow laws. We are indebted to the people of these lands and their forced labor and their unwilling sacrifice. We must acknowledge the tremors of that violence through generations and the resulting impact and generational trauma that is still felt and witnessed today. We must individually and collectively work to actively dismantle systems of racism and white supremacy, to work towards racial justice to a shared vision of collective liberation. On this journey for justice, we begin with a very, very small step today with recognition and acknowledgement. Please consider sharing in this important work to go beyond land and labor acknowledgement in this collection of resources. We're going to be having a follow along guide, and we have several resources that you can link to, including items of going from land acknowledgement to land back, resources on land taxes and reparations. So be sure to follow these links. If we can move to the next slide. And one more. Awesome, thanks. We're getting to the good stuff. Now, folks, we have an incredible lineup today. I'm super humbled and just so pleased to be with this incredible group of speakers. We'll be talking to Michael Esealuka with Healthy Golf, and we have a short video that they have produced and directed that has several community leaders in there too. Shamell, Lavigne with Rise St. James, Roishetta, Ozane with the Vessel Project, John Beard from Port Arthur Community Action Network, and Juan Mancias, Carrizo, Comecrudo tribe. Yeah, so we're just really grateful for their time and energy. And we will be, because of the conversations, we will be pretty packed. So if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A, but we won't be doing anything aloud. We'll work to answer those in writing as it happens. All right, and this is our follow along guide. So just keep in mind, if you don't catch the links that are put in the chat, no worries. You can follow along on this guide, and a double tomorrow. The amazing Austin Miller will send that out tomorrow in an email that will have this recording in it. And then we'll also have, again, these links in there. We're going to be taking a lot of actions to support community members, because finance campaigns are solidarity campaigns. So we've got a great network to work with today, and we're super grateful that you all are here joining us. All right, and we're going to transition over to the video.
It's like we're just this big sacrifice zone going down the Sabine River. Like we're the dumping stock for all the gas industry. This is where all the money is flowing, but it's not flowing to our communities.
What happens here on the Gulf Coast in the next 4 years really dictate what's going to happen on the planet in the next 50 years.
Lake Charles won't sit idly by and become an island and wiped off the Gulf Coast because of industry and their contributions to global warming.
There are more than 20 projects proposed along the Gulf, with the majority of those projects being proposed here in Southwest Louisiana or Southeast Texas. It just seems like they've decided that this area is their dumping ground.
Yeah, it really makes you wonder, like, why are they wanting to put them right here? And I think the answer is that they think that we don't care. They think that people are disposable, dispensable.
We just feel like, we've been made into a sacrifice. The people who are funding this crisis and funding these industry are the very banks that we put our money in. And so banks such as Bank of America and JP Morgan and Citibank, those banks are the banks that are giving money to the industry so that they can build these projects here.
If we don't do anything, we know what the future looks like.
The clock is ticking. It's now been 6 years since the Paris Climate Agreement was adopted, but a report from 6 NGOs called Banking on Climate Chaos found that in that time, the 60 biggest private banks in the world have financed $3.8 trillion in fossil fuels. Campaigners say that money has funded projects which have consequences for communities around the world.
So no new fossil fuel production starting today. That's like zero. Does your bank have a policy against funding new oil and gas products? Mr. Diamond.
Absolutely not.
Through banking crises and rubber stamp mergers, your banks dominate the banking industry. Together you have over $13 trillion, $13,000 billion in assets. That's half the nation's GDP.
I'm Roishetta, Ozane. I have been in Southwest Louisiana for 19 years.
I'm James Hyatt. I'm a resident of Lake Charles. I was born across the river there in Sulphur.
My name is Cindy Robertson. Serve justice, love mercy, walk humbly.
Lottie Lars, born and raised Lake Charles, Louisiana.
A lot of times people outside of the state only know New Orleans. When you talk about Louisiana, you talk about New Orleans. Well, if Louisiana is shaped like a boot, New Orleans is the toe, and Lake Charles is the heel of the boot. We're on the other side of the state.
There's birds and there's animals.
The food is excellent. It's probably the best food ever.
Most important, my family is here.
So I have 6 children, 3 girls and 3 boys.
My kids love this area. I want them to be able to live here.
I don't ever want them to have to fight as much as I have to fight. The biggest problem we have here in Southwest Louisiana and Southeast Texas is the industries and the pipelines.
This river right here, this lake and the river is under a seafood advisory. You're not supposed to eat more than 2 meals a month of certain fish and crabs out of this estuary, and that is directly caused by these facilities who have polluted, and they don't pay to clean it up. They've never paid to clean it up. The fines that they get are like a slap on the wrist. Louisiana is sportsman's paradise. You know, we pride ourselves on the hunting and the fishing. Well, if you can fish but you're not supposed to eat it, what's the point?
In 2020, industrial facilities in the state have dumped over 11 million pounds of toxic chemicals into our waterways.
this is going to have a cumulative impact on the health of our communities, and we need to do something about it now.
I've been on several calls with all of these banks and asked them, why are they putting funds before families and policy before people and money before men and women. And if you look at their websites, a lot of them have these equity clauses, and they go against them when they invest into the very industry that harm the communities that they claim they care so much about.
But they just tell you we want to be community friendly, but they're not. They're dollar friendly on the backs of the community, and that's all.
If you're going to continue to invest in these industries that come into our communities, poison our water, poison our air, and contribute to climate change, which increases the hurricanes that come here and the storms and the natural disasters that we get, then we're not going to put our money in your banks. We're not going to have accounts with you, because our money is important. The money we're putting into your bank is the same money that you're giving the industry to come back and harm us.
We don't need industry. Industry needs us, Lake Charles existed before any of these were built. This was a place of paradise to come swim and play, and a tourist place. Enough's enough. Defend SWLA.
That's right.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that. And again, this was produced and directed by Michael Esealuka with the Healthy Golf. I'm going to introduce Michael here in just a moment. Healthy Golf's purpose is to collaborate with and serve communities who love the Gulf of Mexico, providing the research, communications, and coalition building tools needed to reverse the long pattern of exploitation of the Gulf's natural resources. Michael's Healthy Golf's coastal Louisiana organizer. Hey, Michael. Thanks for joining us today.
And we're joined too by this coffee shop cat, which is a New Orleans thing.
You got to wait. You organized a buddy already. That's impressive.
Yes. Hello, everyone.
Awesome. Michael, you want to tell us a little bit about your role and the work that you're carrying?
Right. So I'm an organizer with Healthy Gulf. Ruth talked a little bit about our organization, but we work across the whole Gulf region. I'm working in Louisiana. And my job is to help communities resist the expansion of fossil fuels and fight for a just transition to clean energy and the right to thrive. So I see my role as, I say the organizer's job is to get behind the people and push. So my role is to meet up with new communities that need assistance, help them develop their own organizations, strengthen their own capacity to lead in their own fights, and then go on and find the next fight, the next community to help.
Awesome. Thanks for that background, Michael. What inspired you to get this docuseries up and going and tell this specific story?
I was kind of bullied into becoming a filmmaker. I never intended this to happen. I am a writer, but I connected with a group called Frontline Media Network that provides video work for frontline communities, telling climate justice stories that aren't usually featured in mainstream media. And so they reached out to me to produce, and I said, I don't know what that is, but I've done it. And I figured it out. Now we're about to put out our 4th video in a few weeks from now. But yeah, I was really excited to start working on this series because I think that oftentimes climate change can feel so big and so abstract that people don't even know where to get started. Like it feels like so big, it's like apocalyptic almost, and people just feel almost demobilized, like and unable to do anything about it. And I feel like the way to intervene and break through that is through storytelling. Like I think of Cancer Alley, for instance. Like when I travel to New York or California or wherever, people know the words Cancer Alley because of decades of movement building, because of groups like Rise St. James who are featured on the call today. People know this term, and that evokes a powerful story that we'll hear more about tonight. And so I think that a lot of the work that we have to do as advocates and fighters in the climate movement is to tell our personal stories, why we care about the places that we're fighting to protect. And I just want to also just briefly share this little quote from a New Orleans-based journalist named Mary Hegler. She said that while we all have, these innovative ideas, we don't have about clean energy transition, solar panels and so forth. We don't have a picture of how they come together to build a new world. For too long, the climate fight has been limited to scientists and policy experts. While we need their skills, we also need so much more. when I survey the field, it's clear that what we desperately need are more artists. And I think that is so true. And so I thought, this is one tool in the belt, using videos to tell complex stories directly from the mouths of the frontline leaders that are leading the fight for climate justice.
Yeah, thanks so much for that, Michael. I couldn't, that's so deeply resonating. What would you say, like, you're traveling up and down the coast and throughout the state, and like, what are you seeing and what are you loving about the communities you get to organize and work with?
I am a diehard fan of Louisiana. I did not grow up here. My family's from Texas and Nigeria, but I moved down here about 10 years ago, and I'm never gonna leave. Maybe I'll leave for a little bit, but I'm always gonna come back. This is home. And I just think Louisiana people are the most friendly, warm, and interesting people. Like, we have so many different kinds of people here. We have very strong indigenous communities that are still here, still preserving their lifeways. We have Black communities all over the state. We're the second Blackest state in the country with a deep, rich history of Black struggle. We've got Croatians, Vietnamese, Honduran people that came here to help us rebuild after storms. And so we're just really like, it's like, I call it the swamp, right? It's a gumbo, it's a mixing pot of all different kinds of people. And it's just like a really, really special, beautiful, beautiful place. But what I'm seeing and what I'm really excited about is that I think that we're starting to build this connective tissue. Like, we're moving, the scale of the build out that we face is so immense. Like, Louisiana, there's over 30 dirty projects that are proposed for our state right now. So we can no longer do this facility fight by facility fight, whack-a-mole approach. Like, we just don't have the time to do that. We have to scale up our movements to be as broad and as powerful as the crisis that we face. And so what I'm seeing more and more is coalition building, communities getting connected across the coast, top to bottom. I'm about to go to Shreveport to work with some folks up there. And then that's not just here in the state too, we're connected across the region. We've got new coalitions forming, like the Permian to the Gulf Coast Coalition and Gulf South for a Green New Deal, that are linking up frontline leaders from across our whole region, and starting to work with people in other countries as well, like Borican and Puerto Rico. So I'm really, really excited about that.
Yeah, right on. Absolutely seeing that too. And Louisiana has a way of like bringing you in, not letting you go. I'm curious too. You have been just like on fire. And I know you got some big stuff coming up. We'll have a slide here in just a minute when we get off here, but maybe you can plug the week of action that's coming up.
Yeah, so we're organizing a week of action, but first I want to shout out Roishetta, who's on this call today, because Roishetta held down this amazing protest during an LNG Americas, this like major conference of top gas industry leaders in Lake Charles in early November. And so that really was kind of, for me, a turning point. I'd never experienced anything like that before. We had shrimpers, we got on their boats, we were protesting, like people from the LNG conference saw us. And that was one of my first time meeting a lot of folks from Southwest Louisiana in person, who I'd never had been on calls with before, but never had gotten a chance to connect with in person. And so from there, I started linking up with folks in my area, thinking we need to do some kind of solidarity actions to really shine a light on what's happening in Southwest Louisiana, because a lot of people have no idea. People don't know that Lake Charles is a major part of the global economy. Like, without Lake Charles, the global economy would not run. But most people in this country don't even know what Lake Charles is or where it is. And so I thought, so I got really inspired by that. But anyways, long story short, we're doing this week of climate action. It's tied to the National Shareholder Showdown campaign led by Stop the Money Pipeline. And so between March 18th and the 25th, we've got 7 different events planned in 5 parishes, which is what we call counties in South Louisiana. So really coast to coast, which I think is really, really exciting. And I'm happy to be part of it. And I know some of the folks, Ash and Josie and Sage, are on the call. So shout out to them for helping organize this. And Josie actually is on the call, and they designed this beautiful, beautiful poster, which hopefully will be wheat pasting around the city this weekend. Oh, I will say just briefly, I know I'm probably running low on time, but we're doing things a little different. I feel like we like to put a little Louisiana twist on things. And so we increasing our emphasizing joy and celebrating our cultural heritage and our lifeways as into our movement building, because you know what, our lives are already so much of a fight. Like, for a lot of people, it's a fight just to put food on the table for their kids. And so they're not necessarily interested in joining another fight that feels so big and immense. And so the way that we break through that is by moving beyond just anger as a motivator into joy and celebrating our culture and the things that we're fighting to protect and defend. And so that's why all these events are not traditional protests. We've got a nature walk and community dinner. We've got a visioning session in North Lake Charles with local officials. We're doing an arts and culture fest. We've got a fundraiser benefit to raise money for rebuilding homes that were damaged in a hurricane in Cancer Alley. And then we've got an arts and culture festival where we'll have local artists, vending, and General Honoré will be speaking as well. So yeah, really excited. Starting on this Saturday, it's going to be a whirlwind.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Michael. I think for all the heart that you put into everything, seeing a lot of like resonation and hearts there, and for your continued organizing and leadership. I'm so stoked that you're able to be with us. I'm going to pass it over to Jackie, and we're going to keep this party moving. So thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. Thank you, Michael. So great to build these partnerships. And now I'm going to be, hello, everyone. I'm Jackie. I'm the co-director of Stop the Money Pipeline, she, her pronouns, calling from occupied Romantish Land in San Francisco. And I'm going to be introducing Shamell Lavigne of Rise St. James. And for those who don't know yet, Rise St. James is a faith-based grassroots organization that is fighting for environmental justice as it works to defeat the proliferation of petrochemical industries in St. James Parish, Louisiana. And so now I will bring up Shamell. Shamell, thank you so much for joining.
Hi, Jackie. How are you?
Doing well. So please tell us maybe a little bit about yourself and where the Formosa fight is at right now.
So I am the Chief Operating Officer for Rise St. James, which is a grassroots faith-based organization founded by my mom, Sharon Lavigne. She's also, I think she's on the call still. But we're working to stop the expansion of the existing plants in St. James, stop Formosa plastics, and then any expansion or I think I already said the expansion, but we don't want any new industry coming into St. James. And so our fight against Formosa, we actually filed a lawsuit against Louisiana Department of Environmental Quality. And we're currently still in litigation. In September, Judge Trudy White of the 19th JDC in Baton Rouge, she ruled against Formosa and vacated all of their air permits. And so, of course, Formosa just won't go away on their own. So they filed an appeal. And so we're waiting on the First Circuit Court of Appeals to make a ruling on it. And we're confident that we're going to win on the appeal level as well. But in the meantime, we're focusing on a robust strategy to continue telling our story. We're organizing the community. We're holding monthly meetings. We're running media advertisements to educate people about the harmful effects of the chemicals in our community. We have the Chemical of the Month, where we feature one of the chemicals that the plants in St. James and throughout Cancer Alley are emitting and poisoning our people with. We also have the Formosa Finance Committee, where we're targeting banks, the executives, the insurers that could potentially fund Formosa. And part of it is the Chase petition that everyone will hear about in a few moments. But we're actually trying to educate people through webinars. We want people to understand the role that the banks play in environmental racism throughout Cancer Alley and throughout Southwest Louisiana and as a whole. And so we're looking to, we want to get commitments from the banks to defund, denounce, and divest from funding the Formosa project.
You all are really busy, and such an inspiration. It's been great to work with you all on Defund Formosa in the past. And you know, the current build out of petrochemical projects has its roots in, you know, very violent and racialized history of this country. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so after emancipation in 1863, many formerly enslaved Americans, they didn't move up north. They stayed. It was through sharecropping or building homes along the Mississippi River. They kind of stayed close to the plantations that they were, you know, recently freed from. And some were able to purchase property and build homes for their families. And so, you know, that represented freedom and prosperity, you know, that we were fighting for. And so I'm a descendant, my mom is a descendant of our ancestors who stayed. And so we've become this dumping ground now for these refineries, chemical plants, cities like Mossville, Westlake, and of course St. James. We've been depleted by environmental racism. What they're doing is infringing on the health and well-being of the residents in St. James. Many people have fallen ill, some have died. And then some people, you know, are waiting to be bought out. Of course, all of the white folks have been bought out. And so now the property value is low. They don't want to offer the Black community what they offered the white folks. Another example of that, not just in St. James, would be the town of Morrisonville, Louisiana, which was founded in the late 1870s after the Civil War. But it's literally disappeared today because Dow Chemical, which is the largest petrochemical company in the state, it resides there now. And then so the only thing that's left there is the historic community of Morrisonville, is their cemetery. And that's more than 100 years old. And so here in St. James, I kind of alluded to the white landowners who own the majority of the land. These are the descendants of the slave owners. These are the, the plantation owners. And so they've sold their property to industry. Some were able to live in their homes until their death. And then the industry decides to build or expand on the land they purchased years ago, while Black residents are left in the dark about these purchases until we hear about them at the parish council meeting when they're seeking approvals to build or get permits. By that time, the industry already owns the land, and it's an uphill battle to stop the industry from being built. Black landowners are seldom offered to sell their land, and when they are, it's for little to nothing. So there's nothing, people can't move to another community because they don't have the resources to do so. The white families in St. James, they were able to continue to capitalize on the land that was formerly plantations that was passed down from generation to generation, while we're left to deal with the poison that the petrochemical plants are spewing every day. We have a historic neighborhood in St. James called Freetown. It was founded by free slaves after the Civil War, and it's now within yards of chemical tanks that are emitting toxic fumes every day. But the exploitation of genocide of Black Americans, it may look different in the 21st century, but there's no denying that racism plays a powerful role in the fates of these predominantly Black Louisiana parishes. And we're hoping that Freetown doesn't become like another Morrisonville. We want to make sure that we don't let that happen. And so what I wanted to also say that just to give a little bit of background about St. James, there are 12 petrochemical plants within a 10-mile radius. Of course, Formosa is trying to become another one of those plants. And so we really have to fight really hard because Formosa is going to be it would be a massive ethane cracker complex, which would emit over 800 tons of toxic chemicals per year, including ethylene oxide, which is a toxic chemical that causes cancers like non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, leukemia, and breast cancer. And so, of course, St. James is located in Cancer Alley, which is the 85-mile stretch from Baton Rouge to New Orleans. And that stretch houses nearly 150 oil refineries, plastics, and chemical facilities. And if you actually take a map of the plantations in Louisiana, particularly in South Louisiana, and you overlay that current map of the petrochemical plant spread throughout South Louisiana, it matches up perfectly. And that is a very telling image for us.
Indeed. Thank you so much for sharing. And that is a wealth of history that I think a lot of us don't realize about the Gulf South and Southwest and Southeast Louisiana, is that this is the next genesis of racism. So I appreciate that. And changing things up, the other part about racism is it doesn't allow for joy. And obviously that's not true. There are beautiful things about all different kinds of communities. And so we're asking everyone, what do you love about the community you organize in?
Well, for me, it's home. There's no place like it. I love the land, the fields of sugarcane and soybeans, the ability to watch my daughter play in the same large yard that I played in when I was a child, the trees I climbed with my brother and my sister. We used to pick pecans and figs from the trees and sit outside and eat. But those days are gone now because the trees are either they no longer bear fruit or they were uprooted by hurricanes that are happening more frequently now because of and intensely due to climate change. I love the culture of our small town where everybody knows everybody. We look out for one another. We have benefit dinners when a member of our community is in need or falls ill. We know all of our neighbors. We celebrate by having crawfish boils, barbecues, church fairs, the bonfires. If you haven't come to Louisiana and experienced a bonfire during Christmas or New Year's, it's definitely an experience that people should come down and experience. I just love the resiliency of our community. We survived slavery, Jim Crow, and I'm hopeful that we will survive environmental racism that's been forced upon us.
Well, we're here with you in that fight, and thank you so much for sharing. That sounds really beautiful, community. All right, everyone. Thank you so much, Shamell. Now we're going to take action to support Rise St. James and their struggle against the Formosa Plastics Corporation. So in the chat, we're going to share a link to a petition. And this is going to be a petition to JP Morgan Chase to denounce, divest, and defund Formosa Plastics' toxic and racist petrochemical complex. So this is about the Sunshine Project, as Shamell was talking about. And this is proposed in what has been dubbed as Cancer Alley. And as Shamell said, this would compound the effects of the over 200 industrial plants along an 85-mile stretch of the Mississippi. So we're all going to take that action. We're going to take a couple minutes, and I'll try to play some music in the meantime. But please open up the link that one of our helpers will put in the chat, and let's sign on. Should take a minute. All right.
Building your online business?
All right. Well, thanks for bearing with me. Thank you for signing. And now we're going to move on to one of the other solidarity actions we're going to take today, which is sharing a little dough. So we have a fundraiser going, and we're going to pop the link in the chat. With Stop the Money Pipeline and Rainforest Action Network, we will be matching funds up to $10,000. So take a second to visit the fundraiser, and we're all going to chip in what we can, whether that's $5, $20, 100, 200 more. We got to definitely show our support for these amazing grassroots organizations. And we've only heard from a couple so far. I still have a number to go. So take a minute to do that. And I will not go back to YouTube setup again. So just get to the link and come back in a minute or so. All right, hopefully you're wrapping up your contribution. And now I'm going to pass it off to Ruth.
Awesome. Thanks, Jackie. And thanks to y'all. I see some of those donations coming in. And again, we're going to match. So if we can raise $3,000, Stomp will make that 6, and then Rainforest Action Network will make that 9. And we want to make sure we're doing that direct support for the communities, because as a finance campaign, whether that was supporting the work in South African apartheid, or now with climate change, and now with communities on the front lines, this is a great way that we can give that direct support. I'm just going to do some really quick overview type pieces because we want to get back to our community members, but make sure that y'all just understand like the vastness. You know, Michael has named it, Shamell just named it. And really just this piece of kind of, Shamell was talking about the petrochemical plants and that build out across Louisiana. And then part of what we're talking about today is the new liquefied natural gas. There's nothing natural about this gas. This is a fossil fuel, and it's actually worse than coal. And this is an even bigger build out on top of what's already there. So these folks that live along this coast are truly at the nexus of environmental justice and climate justice and a public health crisis. Really, I mean, we're talking about breathing clean air, drinking clean water, and then having that collective piece around our shared climate. So I wanted y'all to see the expansiveness of what was happening here, how many actual proposals. And each one of these facilities, they are not small. They're as large as a refinery. If y'all have ever driven by a refinery, it's huge. Sometimes it looks like its own city. So just think of how big they are. If you see the ones in green, those are the ones that already exist and they're in operation. The red is what's being proposed. And then the gold ones are under construction. There is enough energy that exists with what's already been established. We don't need any new facilities. Anything that would be built this year would not come online for 3 to 5 years. So there's none of these facilities right here are going to keep Europe warm this winter or next winter. It has been the oligarchs and the oil industry and the governments that are jumping on this bandwagon in the name of energy security that is completely false. So keep that in mind. And it is not going to be the Louisianans and Texans that have to bear the brunt of this impact. It is part of our job to collectively stop these projects. Next slide, please. And part of what we want to name is that pillar of support for the fossil fuel industry. And that is the banks, the insurance companies, and the asset managers. You want to keep that in mind that these projects can't move forward. All of those proposals, we're talking about like 7, 10, sometimes $20 billion to build a brand new fossil fuel LNG export terminal. Like this is a huge investment. So we're going to name the names and we're going to put pressure on each of these companies. You'll see the first few here are actually Japanese banks because they want to import some of that and that energy Royal Bank of Canada, ING, is a European bank. Societe Generale, putting a lot of pressure on them for the Rio Grande pipeline or the Rio Grande LNG terminal. And then we start to get into the US banks, Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan Chase, Goldman Sachs, Bank of America. Those are branches that we see in our neighborhoods and in our communities every day. So keep that in mind. Whether you're showing up on 321 and you're going to show up at the Day of Action in those communities, be thinking about standing in solidarity with these Gulf Coast communities and the leaders that are here today. Next slide. I feel like this speaks more to like real people, right? You can see the graph and you're like, okay, but like these companies have brands, they have names, we have choices. And you will see their logos there. We know them, and keep those in mind because these are the ones that we're going to be pressuring to stop the largest fossil fuel build out of our generation. Next slide. And now I have the pleasure of introducing Miss Roishetta Ozane, who is always one of the best dressed in the room. Sorry, folks. She just is every time. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Vessel Project. The Vessel Project of Louisiana is a grassroots mutual aid and disaster relief organization founded in Southwest Louisiana in response to several federally declared disasters, including several hurricanes and winter storms, as well as the May flood of 2021. The Vessel Project aims to create horizontal pathways for people and communities to help one another without a hierarchical bureaucratic structure. And welcome, Roishetta.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for that introduction, Ruth.
There she is. Hey.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah. Tell us about the Vessel Project and what inspired you to start this work.
So as you said, the Vessel Project was founded after several disasters that we experienced here in Southwest Louisiana, also, in Southeast Texas and in Mississippi. So what happened, we were in a global pandemic, and then Southwest Louisiana was hit by Hurricane Laura, followed by Hurricane Delta. And then right after that, we had Winter Storm Uri in the beginning of 2021, followed by a massive flood in May of 2021. And so there were just so many disasters that were happening here, and people were already, struggling from being in a global pandemic. We know what happened with that. We all experienced it. But when you pile all of those things on top of each other, and you look at communities that are already struggling, already low income, at-risk communities, and to be hit with all of that at once. As a Black woman, as a single mom of 6, I felt like I needed to do something to help my fellow community members. And that's how Vessel Project got started.
And do something you do. I just appreciate like all the work and effort that you put in, and just like how much energy you carry it with integrity. It really is just always incredible to like witness what you carry. Tell us a little bit about like, what inspires you to fight the LNG, the fossil fuel and petrochemical plants? Because it's a lot. And then you're talking about the work with the Vessel Project and the storms and the relief there. How do you carry all that?
Well, after starting Vessel Project, and the mission of the Vessel Project, like you said, is to help our most vulnerable community members, help them by meeting their emergency needs as quickly and efficiently as possible and as barrier-free as possible. But in meeting the needs of the people, what I was running into was that as soon as you address one of their needs, you find out that that need is caused by something else. And it just kept happening. These things kept intersecting. For example, someone would call about needing shelter, and in the process of trying to figure out how do you get them to shelter? Okay, we don't have any local homeless shelters. We don't have Our local women's shelter isn't operating because it was damaged from the storm. Okay, let's put them in a hotel. Then you put them in a hotel and the hotel rooms are sucking up all of the funds. Okay, so let's try to get them into an apartment or a permanent house. And then you will run into, they may have something on their background, something that they could have done as a teenager that was stopping them from being qualified to move into that apartment. And it was just so many things. It was just like brick wall after brick wall. And I was like, wait, none of these people asked to be homeless. These were not our homeless population that had been homeless forever. These were newly homeless people who had found themselves homeless after these storms. And so in fighting that and steadily getting from one thing to the other and seeing how these things were intersecting, it just kept leading into a bigger fight. So it started off as just this emergency assistance that turned into case management. And then as you're managing these cases and you're understanding that you have to intersect all of these different systems, and you figure out that the reason why we're in this position is systemic and it's built like this for a reason, and it stems all the way back to slavery, as Shamell stated so eloquently earlier. And you find out that Louisiana law is still based in slavery. It's still based in those Jim Crow laws, those laws that were meant to hold Black people back. And you really can't help people the way you want to help them, even with the resources, because the system was set up to fail them. And just trying to get to that core, what is at the core of this, and just finding out that what's at the core was race and the fact that we woke up Black. We were born Black. And so because we were born this way with our skin this color, even though it's beautiful, and we're very proud of our heritage and where we come from, and we're proud to be Black. That thing that we love so much is what was causing us to suffer at the hands of this system. And so trying to figure out how to break that system down. So that led into getting people registered to vote, getting people to the polls, talking to candidates, seeing what these candidates were, what they stood for outside of their political parties. What do you stand for? How are you willing to help the people? And then that led into, we're getting people in communities where it's affordable. But once we get them into this affordable housing in this community is surrounded by oil and gas, and that air in that community is killing them. That's why this house is affordable, and their water is not drinkable in this community. And so, just trying to connect those dots, and because of trying to connect those dots and do all of those things, it's led me to where I am today. But it's opened my eyes to so much, and understanding that we really have to educate people, and we can't assume that people know what's going on around them. And we also can't expect people to care truly about what's going on around them when they have their own individual fires to put out. If someone can't pay their light bill or their water bill or their rent or put food in their mouths, they don't care about an LNG facility that's proposed to come to their community. They don't see that facility when they walk out their door. They can't see those toxic gases that they're breathing. They don't understand that their water is killing them because their local officials is telling them that it's safe to drink, even though they see that it's brown. But when the environmental injustice part comes in, is that if I see my water is brown and I go to my next door neighbor's house and her water is brown, and I go across the street and his water is brown, in my mind, I see that everyone around me water is brown. So that must be how it's supposed to be. Who am I to say it's not supposed to be brown if everyone in my community's water is brown? But encouraging people to leave your community and go across town where it's whiter and wealthier and compare your water to theirs. Now, does your water look the same? And if your water doesn't look the same, why? What's in your community that's not in their community? What do you feel like is contributing to this? And so that's how Vessel Project went from just being an emergency response, disaster response, mutual aid organization into a full-fledged environmental justice organization, because we had to realize that because of these environmental injustices and these climate injustices and these social injustices, the people in these communities who are at the bottom, who are at the last for everything, you know, they're the first in everything bad and the last in everything good. The reason why they're like that, the reason why their communities are filled with these industries that are killing them, the reason why they bear the brunt or recovery, and they're the last ones to recover, but they're the first ones to be called resilient, is because of the color of their skin. They're not resilient because they want to be, they're resilient because they have to be, and they have no choice but to fight because they've been fighting all their life, right? Back to Shamaya's point, you know, we started off as slaves and had to fight for a right to be free. And then once we were free, we had to fight for the right to be recognized as human beings. And once we were recognized as human beings, we had to fight for the right to vote. Then we got that right to vote. We had to fight for the rights of our property, for our land, for things that we had earned. And then once we got those rights, we had to fight for the right to breathe the air on that land because that air was killing us, and then fight for that water. So we fought all our lives. That's all we know. We're not resilient. We're trying to survive. We're trying to live. And we're tired of having to be resilient and tired of having to fight. And so someone had to come out front and say, listen, we have to do this differently. We can no longer allow organizations and groups to come into our community, tell us what we need, tell us what we're going to do, tell us what they need from us. We're going to stand up in our own communities. We're going to say what we need. We're going to tell you how to solve this problem because we know this is where we live. We know that we love to fish, but we can't fish because our estuary has a fish eating advisory, and 9 petrochemical facilities, 9 have been charged to pay a mere I think it's like $5.5 million. 9 facilities only have to pay $5.5 million for poisoning the water that is causing a fish eating advisory in our community. We love fishing. We make our lives off of fishing. Yet we can't do that because 9 industries, including Axial and Citgo and Bridgestone and Firestone Polymers, they've poisoned our water, PPG. And together they only have to pay $5.5 million. Those are pennies to them, but they've killed us. They've killed our livelihoods. And so pointing that out and bringing that to the forefront is what we've been doing. And again, one fight just leads into the next fight. And so while you're fighting those industries, you figure out that your politicians don't care about you because they keep voting to bring these industries here. And once these industries get here, they kill the very constituents that vote for these politicians. And so how can we go around the politicians? And that brings us to why we're here tonight. We have to go after the money that funds these projects because the politicians can vote them in and they can give them the permits, but they don't fund them. The banks fund them. And we have facilities now. We have Driftwood LNG, who has all of the permits it needs, but they aren't off the ground yet. They're not off the ground because their money is not right. You know, in the Black community, we like to say a phrase, say, my money looking funny. Their money looking real funny right now. They don't have enough. That's why they haven't built their site yet. And we're going to make sure that their money continues to look funny because we're going to continue to go after these banks. We're going to continue to go after these financial institutions who invest in them. You know, they're investing on us dying. Think about it. They're giving them money and they're giving the industry money. The industry is telling them, you know, we're going to quadruple, triple, whatever number they give them your money, and you're going to get this much back in returns. That bet is on our lives. That's how many people are going to die to make them their money. But we're going to stop their money in its tracks and make sure that it never makes it to those facilities. And Ruth, I know you said you asked me a question and the answer is somewhere in that question, but I'm pretty sure the majority of the people on this call know that once I start talking, I keep going. Is there another question?
Roishetta! No, I'm feeling that energy. I think everybody else is too. Like, we are here with you. You're so right on with the systemic analysis, having to meet the needs of like local folks and leaders, but looking at the big picture, we're following the money. Like, we're so right here with you. And this is part of why we're here, because we need to build that national network of support. This is not on your shoulders. This is all of our problem. This is all of our work. And we are so grateful for your leadership, because these are the voices that we need to be following. The community knows what needs to be done, and we are here to support you. You are a gift. Let's close this out, because we still have a couple more folks to talk to, but why don't you tell us, I think you got something big happening in April. So why don't you just tell us about that, and then we'll close out here. And thank you.
Well, I didn't expect you to say that this is not on my shoulders, Ruth, because, I think as Black women, we feel like it is on our shoulders, and we feel like we have to do all of these things. And for so long, we haven't felt supported. We haven't felt trusted. People look at us as Black women and they see moms, they see, someone who can raise children, someone who can cook, and they don't value us as people and as human beings, and as someone who can solve this problem if you give us a chance and the resources. And so for you as a non-Black woman to say to me that it's not on my shoulder, I mean, that feels amazing to hear. But for so long, it's been on our shoulders. We have no choice but to fight for our children, to fight for the men in our community, the other women in our community, our elders. It is our fight, and we're tired. And, it's things like this bringing all of us together to know, that we're not fighting alone, that we have people who have our backs. That's what make me get on these calls like this and take time away from my children to educate people and to speak, because I know that I'm just one person here in Southwest Louisiana. But I know that together, if we all do what we're good at doing, if we all individually use our platforms, because we're all experts at something, I know that collectively we can win this. I can't win this alone, but I know that together we can. And so that is the theme for our April Earth Day event, SWLA Better Together. We love Rise St. James. We love Port Arthur Community Action Network. We love the work that is being done in St. John the Baptist Parish, the work that's being done in Freeport, the work that's being done in the Rio Grande. We love all of these frontline communities, and we just want to bring everybody together. We need a collective combined front. We need a collective combined ask. What do we want? What do we want collectively? And we need to ask for that. We need to stand on that, and we need to demand that that's what we get. And we can only do that together. We can no longer be separated and divided. The enemy comes to kill, steal, and destroy. He wants to see us separated, but we have to be together and do this together. And so on Earth Day, April 22nd, in Lake Charles, we're going to have a march in North Lake Charles, which is the predominantly Black area of Lake Charles. The population for Southwest Louisiana, which is a 5-parish area, is about 313,000. In Lake Charles, it's about 80,000. And of that 80,000, 46% are Black, and about 90% of that 46% live in North Lake Charles, where there are no grocery stores, very little access to public transportation, very poor school systems, homes that have not been rebuilt since the hurricanes. This is where the majority of our Black population lives. So we're going to highlight that environmental injustice in North Lake Charles, and we're going to march along the streets, and we're going to go to the Martin Luther King Center, where we're going to have a teach-in and a rally that's going to be led by the one and only Miss Jane Fonda. We're going to have the marvelous Sharon Lavigne speaking. We're hoping to have the great wonderful speaker who's coming after me. He might be last, but he's certainly not least, Mr. John Beard. Hopefully he's going to accept the invitation and come and speak. And we're gonna listen and we're gonna learn. And then to Michael's point earlier, we're gonna bring you to Sulphur, Louisiana, where you may have to wear a mask because there are over 12 petrochemical facilities in the community. That's where I live. That's where I raised my 6 children. But we're gonna bring you to Sulphur and we're gonna give you some great food. We're gonna fill your bellies up with some gumbo, some Gulf shrimp. We're gonna play some good Zydeco music for you and just hope that you leave here rejoicing and ready to join us in the fight.
All right, y'all, you heard it here. Put a circle around that April 22nd and get your community organized to get down to Lake Charles for Earth Day. We're going to close that there. And I just want to thank you so much, Roishetta, for spending your time, your energy, and your wisdom and sharing that with us today.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Ruth. Thank you, Roishetta. Now we're going to take action in solidarity with Roishetta and all of our Gulf partners. So right now we're going to drop a link in the chat so that you can help us tweet at Citibank and tell them no LNG, stop fossil fuel financing in the Gulf. Citi is the second largest methane gas financer in the world, which is why we're taking this action. If you don't have a Twitter, there's another link that will take you to another action. And we'll put both links in the chat. We'll take a couple minutes to do that. And we'll take it from there. Let me see if I can play music.
There's something about being together, like catching up with coworkers and friends.
Everyone needs to have this tool to protect their home.
All right, hopefully you can hear me. Love that music. We're also going to join Roishetta and other leaders in the social media action after the webinar. Again, these slides, a follow along guide, will help us with this little homework. But Roishetta is really asking us to take pictures of industry pollution and infrastructure disinvestment in all of our backyards, whether that's discolored water, dilapidated homes, etc. Post it on socials and tag the banks asking if they're truly investing in communities. And you can use the hashtag enough is enough, stop the money pipeline, banking on climate chaos, or Biden declare a climate emergency. All of them are good. But yes, so many things we can do. Social media can be used. All right, now we're gonna shift gears and I'm gonna welcome on the amazing, inimitable John Beard and going to, let's see if we can get pinned. All right. Hello, John.
Good evening. How you doing, Jackie?
Good.
Good.
I'm very excited to speak with you. So for folks on the call, the Port Arthur Community Action Network, or PACON for short, is an environmental justice advocacy and community development organization. PACON is a 501c3 certified community-based nonprofit serving the city of Port Arthur, Texas, and surrounding areas. So John, please tell us a little bit about your background and why you founded PACON.
Well, I come from a tradition in Port Arthur of people who are active and involved in the community. Being in elementary school, my dad was president of the very first Dad's Club in the city, and my mother was president of PTA. And my family's always been involved in civic affairs. I am a 3-time city councilman. I've served in the Democratic Party for one of the largest precincts in Port Arthur. I was born and raised on the fence line, could look across the street from my home and see the tank farm of the largest refinery in the country, and look out our back door kitchen window and see one of the other large refineries in the country. So I'm born in the belly of the beast, so to speak, surrounded by petrochemical industry, surrounded by one of the major cities that's involved in the petrochemical industry. And PACON really got started in 2014 as the Port Arthur Environmental Justice Coalition in response to one of those chemical companies, Flint Hills Resources, releasing benzene on a historic Black community right across the highway, Highway 73, from what is currently now the Motiva Refinery and Chemical Plant. And hearing about that and hearing there was only just about a week's time to respond to this lawsuit by the EPA as well as the Justice Department, I organized some people that I know of, got them interested in it. We started meeting with the community, and we put together a petition of over 500 signatures as quickly as we could of people, and sent them to the Justice Department, asking them not to approve what they were trying to do, which essentially was this: to give the city of Port Arthur $3 million to buy clean diesel fuel dump trucks and other equipment, whereas the community that was breathing this benzene-laced air was only going to receive $350,000, and it wasn't going to receive it directly. You got several hundred homes there. That money was going to go to an operation called Project Lighthouse, an energy efficiency program. And they can only spend about $20,000 per home. So when you divide 20,000 into 350, that's not very many homes. And those people still had not had anything to help them from the exposure to benzene. One of the outcomes of that was that 2 of the people there, the plant manager and I think one of the other lower plant managers, went to prison for it. But still, that's kind of how we got started. And we ran into some problems and decided to kind of shelve things for a while. And then Harvey happened in 2017. And getting back into that and all just became a natural consequence to try to help meet the needs of people, to help them reestablish themselves back in their home. We converted a grant of over $450,000 into over $3.5 million in goods and services to get people back in their home, buy them new furniture and appliances, household items, essentials, and other goods. And so we were able to do that, and we continue to do some of that work, even with Winter Storm Uri, where we distributed over $40,000 in gift cards to the affected communities, to the neighborhoods and areas that were, as I like to say, the needy and not the greedy, the people that needed it most, who really needed help. So we've continued to do that, but that advocacy extended also into addressing environmental contamination, because I believe with my over 38 years of background in the petrochemical industry, working for one of the monsters of the industry, ExxonMobil, gives me a unique skill set and expertise, having worked in government, worked in industry, and also been a part of the community of an affected fence line community for all these years. So I bring, I think, a very unique perspective on that, and also to the environmental justice movement, to help make a difference and to make progress, to shift the needle, to shift the balance away from environmental injustice to environmental justice, to have a better way of life for people living in Port Arthur and give them a better outcome for their future.
Rock on. Such an incredible story. Thank you for sharing. The next question I have for you is, what avenues are you taking to stop the projects that are being proposed in Port Arthur?
We've been advocating, and I like to say before it even got popular, that the best way to stop these companies is to attack their money. It was said earlier that, when someone's money is funny, that really makes a difference. And we felt like, or I felt like that if you attack their money, you're going to get their attention. It's their money and it's their public image that they cherish more than anything. And so if we can begin to show and put it in a way that it's more than just the people in this circle we're in, we have to expand our ranks in our circle, because right now we're in an echo chamber. Virtually everyone here and all of us on this panel are pretty much saying the same thing, know of the same thing, and are working in some concert together. But that mission has to go out beyond just us to others in the community. There are those who don't know there's a fight and a war going on, how they're being affected, how environmental racism and injustice and environmental injustice not only affects those affected communities, but it affects them too, because if I can't be my best, how can you be your best? The same air I'm breathing that is poisoned and tainted, the water that I drink may be poisoned and tainted, the land I may even be living in or even grow my food from being poisoned and tainted is going to affect you. All life is interconnected. And we have to realize and understand that and find ways to work out and through that. So we started to try to attack not just the money, but also the insurance portion of it, because without the insurance, they can't build these facilities. They can't even insure themselves against loss. So it's critical that we basically attack their money and get them to understand that essentially what you are is an accessory to the act, and that is an act of genocide and murder against indigenous and Black communities and people of color communities. And that's what Port Arthur largely is, and that has extended over a considerable period of time. Matter of fact, when you look at a profile of Port Arthur, economically speaking, here's what you find. You'll find a city of around 56,000, 2/3 of which are considered economically disadvantaged. You will also find a poverty rate that hovers between 27 and 30%. That's a family of 4 living on less than $20,000 a year. You want to say your money's funny? Try living like that. And then you also have the fact of home values. The lowest home values in all of Southeast Texas are here in Port Arthur, and that's a home of less than $60,000. That's the average. There's some higher, there's some considerably lower. But we have to do something to break the cycle of poverty, to break this cycle of racism, environmental racism, that is really just an extension of what has always been here in America. I think a great author once said about that the future of America is going to be based on the color line and how we address it. And when we can't see someone of a light or darker hue being no different than us, because if you cut any one of us, we're all going to bleed red. And if you can't see that similarity, that likeliness, because God made all men of one flesh and blood, then you can't want for me the same things you want for yourself and your family. And why should we not breathe clean air or live in a clean, safe neighborhood or safe environment, free from petrochemical pollution and free from environmental contamination, and be able to have the same jobs and opportunities that you say those businesses create, while when you look at those communities like Port Arthur, that is one of the highest, has one of the highest unemployment rates in all of Texas, but yet there's over $80 billion of investment in this area. How can that be? How can that be in today's America? So we realize that something's wrong, and we realize with the petrochemical industry that it's the money that's being invested. It is the guarantee of being able to be insured so that you can go forward with these projects, and you can do so without fear of losing money, even if you do. That's why the insurance protects them, not just property, but their money too. So we have to address that money, and we have to get them to realize and understand, just as Dr. King did back in the civil rights movement days. Everybody in the whole world saw what happened in Selma. Everybody saw what happened to Emmett Till. And when the world had to come to grips with that and see it, and see the harsh reality of the life people are living, they had no choice but to change their ways. And we have the same mission and the same thing to do today, to get the world to see that. So we're also working with our allies across the pond on both sides, because they too have their same struggles. From the people in Indonesia who have billions of tons of plastics that are non-recyclable being heaped on them and burned in their communities and neighborhoods, to the children of Iraq. And I was just at a film review this about 2 weeks ago at Columbia University, and seeing where the emissions from the flaring is causing children to die. Young girl Fatima died at 9 years old from leukemia, and others who have cancer. And it's not just affecting children, it's affecting adults too. And we have that same problem here in Texas, in Port Arthur, because Port Arthur was told in 2010 that we had over twice the state and national average for not just cancer, but heart, lung, and kidney disease. So we're fighting a great beast, and it's going to take a lot of work to overcome that, to help people live better, because they need help now. My good friend and sister in this movement, Lavigne, says it well, and she said it when we were at a meeting with the EPA several months ago, that while we're here, people back home are dying. And there's some people who are sick and don't know they're dying. And there's some people who don't even know they're sick because they don't have the means. So we have to address this not so much as a racial problem for any one color, but as a human problem. This is about human rights. This is about saving humanity from itself. So we're all here in the Deep South, a part of that fight, and working very hard to try to change that trend, change the momentum, and make this a planet that's a worthy and worthwhile airship and investment for all of us. So we've got to attack their money, change their mind, change the perception, because if we change the perception of people, the policies of those companies will shift. It will shift with the public because they do not want to be seen as being murderers and killers, which they are now.
Well said as always, John. And one last thing before we take action, what is your, what do you love about the community you organize in?
Man, I was born and raised here. And some of the best people I know, present company included, are right here in Port Arthur. And contrary to what James said in the movie, and Roishetta and I make jokes about this all the time, Texas really does have the best barbecue. And we really have the best gumbo and other foods. But, you know, you come on down and see for yourself. You come down and take a sample of hers, take a sample of ours, and be your own judge. But they're good people here. And they don't deserve to have to live that way. They, nor their children, nor their grandchildren. I do this work because it is in some ways a burden placed on me because of the people who helped put me in the position to do this, who encouraged me as a young man, who gave me guidance, gave me love and support. And now I have the same obligation to extend that to them in this time and in this space when everything they hold dear is being placed in jeopardy. That's what we have to do for not just Texas, not just Port Arthur, but for the entire Gulf South. Lives are at risk, and it's not just the Gulf South, it's the world itself. So we're in this fight, and I find it no better place to be in this fight with people like you, Jackie, and others who understand this, but we've got to take this message to a broader audience. If we have been charged to save the world, question is, are we ready and willing to do what it takes to make that happen? I believe we can, I believe we will. We will change the future. So let's go after it, let's get it, and let's make it happen.
Couldn't have said it better. I agree. This is the crew to do it. Thank you so much, John, as always, for your wise words. And now we're going to take action, and I'm going to share my screen so that we can do that. Our link populators will share the link in the chat so that we can all be taking action at the same time. We're going to sign this petition to U.S. banks to keep them away from Port Arthur. And this could take about a minute. So get to it and see you in 50 seconds.
Yes, Jackie, if I can say sign up and share. If you sign up, get 2 people to sign up and ask each one of them to get it. We have to extend this and spread this. This is not just my message. This is every one of us here to take this message to those we know who are who are interested and concerned. Concern is good, but action is better. We need those who are ready to take action by helping us with this petition drive and all of the work that we're doing here in Port Arthur and all through the Gulf South.
Absolutely what John said. Sign the petition, share it out, save the link, bookmark it, write down your notes, and then send it to a friend. All right, the next action is also homework for after the webinar, but you can also download the Climate Action Now app, which now has a specific feature to send a petition to various elected officials that they need a study done to address the pollution in Port Arthur. So it takes a little bit too long for the space of this webinar, so this is your homework afterward, but you can download the Climate Action Now app and search Save Port Arthur. Again, this is in the follow along guide. It's also going to be part of the slides that will be sent out after the webinar. All right, I'm going to pass it to Ruth.
Awesome. Thanks, folks, for staying with us. It's been a powerful time together. We're not done yet. We've got one more speaker, and I'm so pleased to introduce him. We have Juan Mancias with the Carrizo Comecrudo tribe that will be rounding us out and closing us down for this evening. Just a quick intro here. The Carrizo Comecrudo people live along the South Texas Rio Grande Delta. Despite the lack of culture and tribal understanding of written historical data, the so-called dependency factor, apparent genocide, and Christian conversion, the Carrizo Comecrudo survived the occupation of their homelands and spiritual souls. They continue to fight for their land and their sovereignty today. I also want to note a big congratulations to Chairman Mancias, who had very little sleep last night and is a great grandfather today. So congratulations, Juan.
Thank you very much. How are you? How are you doing?
How are you doing?
I'm okay. We've had a long day. I still haven't seen the baby yet. I'll see him tomorrow morning. She came 4 days in a good way to us, right before we do the awakening of the bears dance on Saturday. So it's a good sign, I guess you could say that. And
it's a very good sign.
Yeah. So yeah, we're really concerned about what's happened in the Rio Grande Valley with some of these things that we have with the two LNGs that are really trying to market themselves by using some real bad tactics, in their marketing procedures. Of course, Next Decade is in charge of the Rio Grande LNG, the one that has actually started doing what they call site preparations, which is not really construction. So I could have gone out there and impeded the construction if I wanted to, because it's not site, It's all in the words that they use and how they continually use the verbiage. Let me greet you again, friend, and in my language, Itayaple Mawutipele. I just want to make sure that people know that we're still here, we still exist. Our language was recorded back in 1886 down there in the Rio Grande Valley, but our roots run way into up in North Texas around Paladro Canyon, Amarillo, up all the way up to Carrizo Canyon in Campo, Colorado. We have all the history. If anybody wants to look at who and what we are, we're not federally recognized because we're, of course, one of the keepers of one of the sacred medicines that everybody's using through today. And so I think that a lot of times that comes into effect. I've been involved with this since, I guess, the day I was born. I used to listen to this. We were just having a podcast. You're welcome to listen to our podcast every Wednesday. We call it The Elders' Voices. And we are doing that on every Wednesday. And me and my cousins, some of the other elders, get around just to shoot the fat, and around the fire if we have to. But we want to make sure that people start understanding and listening why we're who we are and why we do what we do and why we try to protect the lands down in South Texas. It's for me, it's just a question of listening to the stories that I heard from my grandfather growing up. And I really don't like to hear the word New World. And I think sometimes people use it a lot. This is not a new world. We were already here. As a matter of fact, 530 years ago, when the first Spaniards forded the Rio Grande through the Boca Chica, we were there. We greeted them and treated them like human beings. But on the way back, as we went up the river and came back, they started killing us and abusing us in every way, our children, our women, in every way that they could. And so it became it became the beginnings of survival. I mean, it took them 60 years before they came back into this area with their missionaries, and that became another problem. I know there's a lot of talk about the residential schools and the boarding schools up north, but here we were hit with it by the Europeans real early with the missions that were set up in this area, and everybody kind of enamors the mission system and what had happened. I'm not one of those. We were the ones that never went into the missions, so that's why our language survived, and it was recorded in 1886. So one of the big things that that we're trying to do is maintain that culture, and I'm sorry, I don't want to say culture, because again, it's one of those buzzwords that everybody wants to use. It's our life ways. It's how we lived and how we live today, and we still live that way. It's not a religion. It's not anything like that. And when we start looking at what happened at Garcia Pasture, knowing that there's 32 villages there where the Texas LNG wants to set up, and our concern and their solution to is we'll build a fence around it, which means that we still couldn't get in, and still not allowing us in there. The Port Authority of Brownsville says no trespassing to us Indians on our own land. So they've tried to make us strangers on our own land by telling us, well, only the government can recognize you, and that still says that they're telling us who we are and trying to dictate our solutions to who we are. And so and Garcia Pasture, we finally got it put on the World Monument Watch as a world monument. It is a national historical site, and it's registered, but they're still threatening it by setting up that LNG there. And of course, the other LNG that's there, we're talking about pristine land that hasn't been touched by this kind of gentrification, where they not only do they gentrify the land, but they gentrify our souls. They gentrify our physical being, and they bring in their diseases. To me, fossil fuels is the epitome of the contaminated blankets they were handing out to our people with smallpox that was killing us, and I think that's one of the things that I see is happening here. So when they talk to me about spirituality and and all the things that that people are doing today, I always tell them, I said, my spirituality lies in those people that died there, that suffered there, that cried on that land, that bled on that land, that sweated on that land. And that's important to me. And that's why I have to stand by what I believe in. And what I have to say is this land is not that we own it, but it's because it owns me. It owns all of us. And now that a lot of the people that are here are part of this land as well, we have to learn not to forget our past. We have to learn to grasp it, take it close to ourselves, because that's who we are. This air that we breathe is important to us. This water that we drink is important to us. This land that we walk on and that everybody wants to farm now is important to us. We are part of this creation. We're not above it or below it. And 530 years ago, they came to take all of that out of here. They came in even for the Fountain of Youth in Florida and couldn't find it, so they worked all the way into Texas. And then 530 years later, what are they doing? They're still coming in, taking what they want and shipping it overseas. All of this is export. We're not going to use it here. But why are they destroying who we are continually to promote, their ancestors in Europe and in Asia? I don't understand. This is the genocide that's occurring. This is what it constitutes a genocide, when they take away your language, they take away your way of being, they take away who you are. They say that you can't do this. It's against the law for you to dance. It's against the law for you to do this, to sing, to speak your language. You can't look like you used to look, so you got to cut your hair. And I think that for us, this struggle is not just there, but it's interconnected to every other struggle that is happening along the Gulf Coast. Because we were migratory. We traveled. We traded with other tribes, and when they tried to confused everybody by who we are as the Comecrudo people, the Carrizo Comecrudo people, the Eshtokna, then they don't understand that this language is not a Uto-Aztecan language, but it's made of this land. This is the language of this land. So they try to take the language out of the land, so the land has no language. It can't speak. The ocelot can't speak. The bear can't speak. I mean, they found a little bear on I-10 dead on the side of the road, and the headline on the San Antonio paper said Mexican bear found dead on I-10. And I'm going, what are they doing? Checking papers on the bears too? Those bears don't know that they're Mexican. They don't know they're American. But here they are. They promote these ideals that are not even that aren't even value systems. They don't have a real value system anymore. So they've missionized us. They've Christianized us. They forced us to do this. There's no assimilation. None of us as Native people have assimilated. None of us have acculturated because we've been forced to be who we are right now. And we've adopted this colonization as part of it to survive. We've adapted to it. But a lot of us haven't forgot who we are. In our language, you don't have a word for prayer. So we say, I remember. So a lot of the things that we do is, I remember my grandfather. I remember my grandfather and my grandmother sitting at the tables and saying, do you remember the day? And that was like a prayer. That was like a special spiritual moment, because we spoke about those days that they lived and when they lived. And that is the connection that was been handed down to us. And that's what we have to offer, even to this new great grandchild that I have, and now she's going to walk around on her land with the name of the language of the land. And that makes it important, not from somewhere else, but from here. They've changed the names all through the valley. There's names that we had for those places down there, but our first oppressors was the Spanish language, and then the second oppressor was the English language. And we have to call that out ourselves, because we have names for these things. And so we are starting to use and talk about it in our language the way that our ancestors did. That's what's stopping what's going on right now, because our ancestors are there with us right now, and we're going out after them, and we're going after these countries that invaded this land and are now still taking the richness, the resources that should be where they're from here, from this land, and we're going to find ways to take them to court in their own countries, again, crimes against humanity, crimes against genocide, and maybe they will in turn around and do it to this country, because this country needs to be accountable for the American Holocaust, for this genocide that they've done for 500 years to the original people of the lands, and for what they did with the bringing in of the slavery situation in this country. We helped the people who were running away as slaves and took them into Mexico, right down there. That we were there for a year and a half. We occupied that cemetery, because that was a freedman cemetery. That's where they went across. At one time, that river ran 500 feet from where that area is. That's an old Pony Express highway also. And all they can do is continue to destroy the history of who we are. They want to erase us. If they don't see us, we're out of mind. But we have, in other words, if they don't conceptually see us being there and standing there and saying, I have a right to be here because these are the lands that own me, they need to understand that they can't erase that anymore. We have to be present there. That's why we're having this youth walk all the way from Monahans, Texas, down to Boca Chica, because Boca Chica is the place of our creation story, where first woman was born, by the way. And that makes it very important to all of us that we understand that this is the beginning of something, of a people that haven't gone away, that haven't lost their way, haven't lost their life ways, haven't lost their language, and that's why we maintain the connectedness to everything that is around us, because all of it is connected. I keep telling people, I said, yes, we have a Gulf of Mexico, but it also extends from Boca Chica down into Veracruz, down into the Yucatan. And we used to travel that beach. All of us did. Those of us that lived along there to fish. We always knew when those hurricanes would come. But these guys aren't even giving us any ideas. Next decade, I haven't heard them say anything about the prevention, their weather prevention, and what's going to happen if something like happened. They're only 5 miles from SpaceX. One of those rockets falls on top of one of those monstrosities, it's going to blow up the whole county practically. And nobody even wants to mention those things. But the Port of Brownsville and all the little sold out, corrupt politicians in the area are really ready to do that. And that's why we take a stand. That's why we're there every day. That's why we're right in the front. I'm not just grassroots. I'm also frontline. I'm right there all the time. And to be there, like, John B was saying, to be there, or like Sharon says, to be there, we have to be able to have a crew back here taking the calls, making sure that the administrative stuff is done. So those things are important to be able to operate. And we're not a big, huge tribe, but we do have a vast of land. We were able to buy 5 acres down there, and we're going to turn it into a good farm, a good place of saving native plants, because they've torn up so many of the sotelo. If you were there, you would see what I'm talking about. And that's why I keep saying, our infrastructure, our critical infrastructure is different than theirs. Ours includes this, who we are, and this who we want to accept in the ideals of, not the ideals, but in the values of who we are. Because we're 70% water, when we cross over, that water in our body, it evaporates right into the atmosphere. Our bodies, they shrivel up, become part of the earth, and the air, the last breath we took goes into the air again, and it becomes part of what you're breathing, what the water you're drinking and bathing in. These are our ancestors, and we have to learn to accept and make sure that water is clean if it's going to continue. But we don't see that because we're not above it or below it. We're not here to have dominion over the world. Over the earth, this is all we've got. There's no two worlds. I can't live in this world and that world too. I have to live in my world so people can understand what that world's about, what this world's about. And that's why we fight the LNGs. We just, I just noticed that Credit Suisse, one of the banks that is backing the LNG there in Brownsville, the Rio Grande LNG, is having bank troubles. So, and that's good. And I mean, we've talked. I've gone over to France and spoke to PNP Paribas, and they pulled out of all fossil fuels industry because they heard what we were saying. They didn't want to be part of the genocide. But I'm ready to take France and take Credit Suisse. I mean, not Suisse, but Credit Suisse too. They don't pull out, and Macquarie Bank and Societe Generale to court, and in a world court, and sue them for not listening and not providing the proper consultation that we need to hear. I mean, next decade still hasn't told us anything. Next decade has not said nothing that's gonna be there to hold us, with them, to be able to hold them accountable for what they're doing. And that's the largest part of how I feel about this that is going on right now.
Yeah, Juan, you said it all, and I just really appreciate your kind of like honesty and directness. And I tell y'all, we were in one of these bank meetings, and Juan just let those Credit Suisse executives, he's like, this is continued colonization, it's continued genocide, and their jaws just dropped. Like he was just telling it how it is. We are totally here to support you all. Y'all have been putting up an incredible resistance. There was once 5 terminals. They're now down to 2, maybe 1. And there's bankers stepping out left and right. And it's because of the incredible resistance with Juan, with the Carrizo Comecrudo tribe, with Save Our GV from LNG, and incredible work with the Sierra Club Lone Star chapter. It's been really, really awesome to witness. I'm going to start to close this out here, but I just wanted to thank you so much, Juan, and I hope that you get some sleep and just like really real blessings to you and your family, and that the walk goes very seamless and the logistics are all, they all work out and it goes really well. So sending you all.
We're going to need some help on the walk too, because as many people that can come and help us to make sure that, you know, those runners and everybody there is well secured and we have good security, because we're going right through the middle of Redneckville. So, and I'm not afraid of them, but you know, I'm just being by myself, you know, it doesn't take long. So just remember, come out and help us out, and however you can, and we should, and listen, for anybody that wants to give up to 100, let's say $200, I'll give them one of my books that I wrote. It's called So Your Grandma's an Indian, but You Don't Like Controversy. And it's growing up Indian in Texas, and I'll be more than to autograph it for them if you let me know. Anybody gives more than $200.
Hey, let's plug that, because you know what? That fundraiser that we've been working on is at 1557. You all are the hardcores. You've been with us this whole time, and I feel like this is the community that we're building. Like, can you get us over that finish line? I know I need to go get my card, and I'm gonna throw down in there too. And I want an autograph book by Chairman Mancias. Also seeing some great YouTube pieces here that he's been doing. So if you want to hear some more of those stories, just really compelling information, all those years of knowledge and experience really kind of shared here. I do want to close this down. So we're going to take one more action, and that is going to be from the Sierra Club. You got to tell these banks to stay away from the Rio Grande Valley. We know that this deal is literally in front of them right now. So your voice is critical right now. All of these petitions are important. Like, don't get me wrong, all of this is important, but we know from inside information that the banks are deciding on this stuff right now. So we are doing everything possible to intervene. We're also getting ready if there is, you know, direct action that needs to happen on the ground, and making sure that the folks in the walk are secure and safe, and they can do that. And we're here to support the folks in the Brownsville area and throughout the ancestral territories of the tribe. So please take this final action. And then just going back to the fundraiser, because we know money talks, it walks, but if you can make that last donation, we're super here for it. If you can make that stretch gift, I'm going to go, I work for a nonprofit. I'm going to put my $50 in to help us get to that 2,000. Can you match me in that 50? Do you have 50 within your household that you can give? That would be a huge thing, so that we can close this out and make sure that each of these groups are getting at least $1,000 for their incredible leadership, and that we can grow the wealth and resources as one of the main things that we can give and do, as well as our labor as we move forward, because this is the leadership of the Gulf South, and we are so honored to have shared this time with them and with you. We're going to close this out. So I'm going to go to this last slide here. We'll be dividing these funds up amongst all the groups that are here. So we have Pecan, the Carrizo Comecrudo tribe, Healthy Golf, Rise, Vessel Project, and then Rise St. James, and then across the groups. But we're going to ask folks to check folks out on social media. So if you want to follow, you heard about the awesome stuff that's happening, the Louisiana Week of Action. Next week, you can follow Healthy Golf for more information there. You heard about Lake Charles Earth Day. You could be following the Vessel Project to learn more there. You heard about the Ancestors to Youth Walk, so you can follow more at the Carrizo Comecrudo tribe. These are the Instagram handles, and there's always stuff that's happened at Rise St. James. You're talking about the chemicals education that they're doing. So these are great accounts to be following. Get yourself educated, both politically on the issues, and get your heart strong and ready. These folks need support. So this is one of the critical ways that we can support. Please do give to that donation link one more time, and really, really appreciating each of your energy and your time and your attention this evening. This is, again, a jumping off point, and we're going to be sharing this work, and it's only going to get bigger to stop the biggest fossil fuel build out of our generation and to provide this key support for people that are impacted by Cancer Alley throughout Louisiana and Texas. So appreciating each of you and your courage and getting up today and being willing to participate in this fight. And so thank you so, so much. And thank you to all of our volunteers, Stop the Money Pipeline, Awesome Austin, Kyle and Zach from Sierra Club. And thank you so much to each of these panelists and to my co-host, Jackie. Thank you, folks. Take care.